Once, back in Peter's time, the sexton of one of the churches had a vision of a thin, bare-headed woman. He took it as a bad omen and spent the whole evening in the inn shouting, "St. Petersburg shall be laid waste." The authorities seized him and beat him mercilessly to discover what he meant. But the word was already spreading around the city. St. Petersburg shall be laid waste. Today, no one remembers where the terrible prediction came from, but it lives on from age to age. This is hardly surprising. In St. Petersburg, people always believed in legends and predictions. Houses, like people, have their reputations. There are houses where, by general agreement, something is not right, where people notice manifestations of some sort of evil, or at least inexplicable force. In St. Petersburg, a reputation of that sort attached to the building of St. Michael's Castle. Mysterious phenomena attributed to ghosts and spirits have been observed here almost from the moment of the castle's foundation. It's said that even when Emperor Paul I lived here, the voice of Peter the Great was heard in the place, and Paul himself saw the shade of his formidable ancestor. He supposedly left the grave to warn Paul that his days were numbered and the end was approaching. The prediction came true. Many legends surrounded St. Michael's Castle, later known as Engineer's Castle. It is the most mysterious of St. Petersburg's palaces. The only thing people knew about it was that Emperor Paul I was assassinated there. There are few who could add that even earlier there had been another palace on the same site in which Paul was born. That was the summer palace of Empress Elizabeth, the daughter of Peter the Great and great-aunt of Paul. The summer palace, designed by Rastrelli, was very beautiful. Its interiors were adorned with elaborate gilded carving and a host of mirrors. It was in Elizabeth's summer palace that Paul spent his childhood years, probably his happiest time. At least, he later said, "Here I was born, and here I would like to die," as if he foresaw his fate. In his many years as heir to the throne, Paul dreamt of having a palace of his own in St. Petersburg. Long before he succeeded his mother, he shared his ideas with the architect Bazhenov, who later made the first designs and sketches of his future residence. But it's no exaggeration to consider Paul the true architect of St. Michael's Castle. Paul sought the right look for his future home in books on architecture as well as in his travels around Europe. He invested much in the project, his time, his thoughts, his knowledge and his spirit, producing an edifice that was an extension of his personality, his self-portrait in masonry. When he ascended the throne, Paul immediately began the construction of his castle. Peter would have been pleased with his great-grandson. The immense edifice was put up in less than 4 years, something wholly unprecedented in Russian building practice. Contemporaries called the new imperial residence a wonder of luxury and taste. Indeed, Paul built a palace in which to live, but it turned out to be a place in which to die. He lived in his new palace only 40 days. Sorrow showed on the faces of the Grand Duchesses and the Empress on that March morning in 1801. Their father and husband, Emperor Paul I of Russia, was dead. On the 12th of March 1801, Alexander, the eldest son of Paul I, announced that his father had died of a stroke. And although everyone knew that in actual fact he had been assassinated, it was utterly forbidden to speak about it in public. Only in 1905, 100 and more years after those tragic events, did the last Russian emperor, Nicholas II, lift the ban. Time had done its work. The killing of Paul I had come to be seen not so much as an act of regicide, as the deliverance of Russia from a despot, and that despite the fact that many of Paul's undertakings were continued by his son, Emperor Alexander I. The historian Kluchevsky put it this way: a single great anecdote put the whole of Paul I's reign in the shade. The poet Pushkin called St. Michael's Castle an empty monument to a tyrant, a palace abandoned to oblivion, and with his gift for a resounding phrase established a stereotype that hung over the building for a century and a half. Today the palace is returning from oblivion. The three-arched bridge that once spanned the moat dug around the castle was discovered practically undamaged beneath a thick covering of earth. The inscription on the gable, reading "Holiness becometh thine house forever," has been restored. Those same 47 fateful Russian letters that are supposed to have determined the number of years Emperor Paul would live. The rightful colour of the building has been restored, and the spire of the palace church re-gilded. A little more time needs to pass, and it will no longer be necessary to prove to people that St. Michael's Castle was a luxurious European palace, and not the sad and gloomy haunt of ghosts